Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we've been going through the book, which is commonly called the Mutn Abu Shujaa, and we have made it into the chapters when it comes to certain types of transactions. So we talked about riba, we talked about some of the other things of that regard buying and selling, and the last thing we talked about was guarantees of different types. And then the thing that we'll start up with today is what is called Sharikah. And Sharikah in Arabic, it basically means something shared. And as we talk about, when we talk in like Aqidah, we'll talk about that shirk is of the major sins. This is the thing that takes someone outside of Islam as well. So it's of the greatest of sins, which is Sharikah, which is making partnership with Allah. Which we would call shirk, which is the same basis of the word, and this means like making a partnership, when like saying that someone else also has ownership alongside of Allah or something of this sort. Of course, this comes in different areas that we'll talk about in Aqidah, but the word Sharikah means a partnership, like a business partnership, which is what we'll talk about some of these things today. And some of these rulings, they have modern day. They have modern day like things that we look at that is similar to it. So we take similar rulings to this, and we're looking at this from the Shafi'i madhab. So we'll talk about that inshallah from that view. And the basic essence of it though is that people mix their wealth in like a monetary investment to go forward in a certain endeavor. And so they mix this wealth into one pot, and then everyone, according to how much they put in, of what percentage, they get the reward from that, or they lose, like depending on whether the company is successful or it's not. And oftentimes the word Sharikah itself is translated as company in English. So like we would say, like in Arabic, a Sharikah is a company in English. But of course, this is a technical definition, or like this is a technical word. So we look at it according to that meaning in Arabic. So the author here, he says, Faslun, which is the first chapter here. And so this chapter, he says, وَلِلشَّرِكَةِ خَمْسَةُ شُرَائِطَ. And so he says, and that for the Sharikah, which is the business partnership, there's 5 conditions. There's 5 conditions for this business partnership. And so the first thing he says here is that وَأَن تَكُونَ عَلَى نَاضٍ مِنَ الدَّرَاهِمِ وَالدَّنَانِيرِ. And so the first one is that it's based on a single currency. When he says nad, he means that it's a single currency that is an established currency of that place. And so it needs to be in a certain type of currency. And the reason for this is kind of because you're mixing this money, so you don't want to be able to see whose money is what. So it should be mixed. And this basic concept will come up again with the next couple points he says. And so that it needs to actually be on an individual currency. And so, of course, this should be a currency that people are sharing with this currency. And so it's on a single currency. It shouldn't be a different currency. So if someone's doing euros and another person's doing dollars, no, it needs to be the same currency that they're putting in this, so that it looks similar, of course. And so then the next thing he says is وَأَن يَتَّفِقَا فِي الْجِنْسِ وَالنَّوْعِ وَأَن يَخْلِطَ الْمَالَيْنِ. So in that it needs to be of the same type, يَتَّفِقَا فِي الْجِنْسِ وَالنَّوْعِ, that it needs to be the same genre and type of goods, or like or of money is a better translation here. And so and this is because in the time that they would in the time back in the day when they would have certain gold coins and certain silver coins, these gold coins, after being used a long time, little pieces of gold would fall off of it. So there'd be like little pieces that would be missing of the actual gold coin. So you'd have the gold coins that were sahih, which would be considered like something that is new, and then you'd have the old ones which are of less value. So this would need to be the same type. That's why he says the same type of genre of the currency. Like it would need to be either new coins with new coins or old coins with old coins. It couldn't be a mix between this, because there would be a bit of difference, which would affect the rate of saying how much is for who. and so it need to be the same type. That's why he says by type and genre, the same type of currency. In this day and age, we don't necessarily have that with the currency that we use, and the currency is the same. You put it in the bank, it comes out the exact same way. And he says here for the third thing is that it's mixed, and that both people's money are mixed together. So this is important that the money gets mixed, and it needs to be mixed. And of course, everyone knows how much everyone put into this, but it would be mixed between the people. And the goal of this is so someone can't say this money was from my doing and this money was from someone else's doing. No, it should all be mixed, so where there's no difference between the type of money that goes in there. Everyone, they no longer see their money; they see the mix. And so this is the basic idea behind this. And then also he says, the fifth one here is وَأَن يَأْذَنَ كُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا لِصَاحِبِهِ فِي التَّصَرُّفِ. And he also says, and that each one of the partners, the fourth condition, is each one of the partners gives the other partner the right to financial transactions with the shared money. So everyone gives the other people inside of the business, they give each other the right to do business with that money. And so like that money that is the shared money, every single one of the partners, they give each other the right to utilize this money in the business. And so of course the money would need to be done with like trust within the business for the use of the business itself. Of course, it's not personal money for people, but it's rather for the business, and so it need to be taken care of in that way. And so everyone needs to give everyone else the right to be able to do the transactions with that shared money and the right to use that shared money in those transactions. And then the fifth thing here that he mentions is وَأَن يَكُونَ الرِّبْحُ وَالْخُسْرَانُ عَلَى قَدْرِ الْمَالَيْنِ. And that also the profit and loss is shared according to the percentage of the initial amount of investment. And so this is also important, as anyone who has the whole point of the business is to make money, so that the people put in money and they come together with their goods and their skill sets. And then everyone that put in a certain amount of money, they will get back according to the percentage that they put into the money. So if someone went into the business with a partner that was 50-50, then whatever they did, like say they differed a little bit in their work and whatnot, they would still get 50-50 back and forth as long as that's what they put in at the beginning. But of course, if someone only put in 20% and the other person put in 80%, then in this case they would get the benefit, and the loss would be according to this 80-20. Or if there's multiple partners and each one of them had a different percentage, we'd look at what is the amount that they're going to get back. It's going to be according to that percentage. Or what's the amount that they're going to lose? And it's the same thing. All of it will be divvied up according to that percentage that they put in. So say the business went under and whatnot, they're not making benefit, and then they want to cancel the business. Then the people are going to look at the money that's in the business, and whoever they'll split it up according to how much they put in. This person put in 80%, he'll get 80% of what's left. This person put in 20, okay, he's going to get 20% of what's left in this business. And so these are the basic five conditions that he brings up here. And then the last thing he'll bring up is a couple notes here. He says, وَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا فَسْخُهَا مَتَى شَاءَ وَمَتَى مَاتَ أَحَدُهُمَا بَطَلَتْ. And so he says, and for each one, they can call off the business agreement whenever they want. So like whenever they want, they can call this off, and they say, no, I don't want to do this business anymore, and they can call the business agreement off. And so this is the view of the Shafi'i method in this matter. But of course, this can be problematic, because sometimes when somebody puts a lot of work into a business, for someone to just be able to cut off the business all at once just by saying no, this can cause great harm. And so as some of the scholars have said, in this day and age, this is something that someone would need to look in, that there's not going to be serious harm that comes in with just like canceling a business right up, like straight away, that someone cancels the business right away, especially if somebody has developed a brand recognition and all of these things, because this is something that holds value that's going to be wasted a lot. And this goes against like the general principle of not wasting wasting that we shouldn't be wasting our money or like throwing away our money. And of course, like a brand value carries recognition, and so for someone to just say, okay, this one business partner wants to cut it off, and then everyone else has to like kill the business. This is hard. So this is one of the things some of the modern day scholars will say this is not something that we'd actually act upon. But this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, and like that is whenever one of them dies, the partnership is nullified. So if anyone dies, then it's then the partnership gets nullified, and this would be the same thing here, according to like that view where this would cause serious harm for a business. If just one person died from the business, that the whole business is dismantled. This would create like serious hardship. So a lot of them would say that this would actually go to the waritha. Like this would go to the people, the inheritors of the business, and they would now have the right to do what they want. And also like the Sharikah, like in this modern day and age, is also like someone who holds stocks. So stocks in a certain way is like this. There's a few different differences in that, but it's something that is close to this. And close to this meaning, because this person actually owns a portion of the business. And of course, if he owned a great enough portion, or like a big portion of the business, he would actually have weight in what is said, as opposed to someone who owns a small amount. He's probably not going to have any weight in what's going on in the actual business, just because of the ways that they set it up. But this is a modern day kind of example of how this comes across. But there are some differences in that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So the next chapter we'll go into, inshallah, here is the chapter which is called Wakaalah. And Wakaalah is what we'd say in English, delegation, or like having someone do something for you. And that's the basic concept of it, is to give someone something to do for you. Instead of you doing it yourself, you have someone else do it. And this is the author here, Abu Shujaa rahimahullah. He says, وَكُلُّ مَا جَازَ لِلْإِنسَانِ التَّصَرُّفُ فِيهِ بِنَفْسِهِ جَازَ لَهُ أَن يُوَكِّلَ فِيهِ أَوْ يَتَوَكَّلْ. And so this is a basic concept that he brings here, which is in everything that is permissible for a person to do, like the tasarruf, which is a type of transaction or something, everything that is permissible for a person to do for himself, it's permissible for him to delegate or to be delegated for it. So he can either delegate someone else to do it for him, or he can be delegated to do it for someone else. So this is the basic concept, and this is of course the wording here encompasses more than just financial transactions, and encompasses other things as well. So such as if someone wanted to marry off their daughter, but he's not going to be able to be there, so he has someone else do the marriage contract for him. This is also okay for him to do. Or someone, he is very busy and he wants to have other people run his business for him, and he only focuses on some things, then he tells them, do this for me, and they can do this in his in his name and for him. And so this is the transaction kind of that we're looking at. The only thing that should be noted is, of course, acts of worship are not something that fall into this category, with the exception of like someone doing Hajj for someone who's unable to do this, or like that's the only like act of worship that could be like this. And also someone, if they wanted to pay zakat, so they give their money to someone to pay zakat for them. They say, I want you to put this money towards zakat. So they're giving this money to someone else to go put it to the categories of zakat that should be given it to those people. That in this case he can do this as well, and this is an act of worship. But all the other acts of worship, like this is in general, this is not permissible. You can't tell someone to go pray 2 rakas for me, and like no, this person is supposed to pray for himself. He's supposed to read Quran for himself and whatnot. So this is a thing that only encompasses like the worldly aspects, not necessarily the acts of worship, except with the person who can't do Hajj because he's physically unable to. So he sends somebody out to do Hajj for him. This is the major exception from that rule. And so this person can so anyone can make a person the person who makes someone else do something for him, he would be called a muwakkil, and the person who does the thing for someone else is called the wakil. The first thing that the author says is that anything that is permissible for him to do for himself, it's permissible for him to let someone else do it, or or for him to do it for someone else. So then the next thing he says here was وَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا فَسْخُهَا مَتَى شَاءَ. So he says, and this delegation is a at-will contract. It's basic meaning. So anyone can terminate it whenever they wish, and then the next thing he says, وَتَنْفَسِخُ بِمَوْتِ أَحَدِهِمَا, and then it is terminated when either one of them passes away. So it's nullified with the death of either one of them. So this is an at-will contract. So if somebody is wakil for somebody, they tell him to go do something, and then either the person who is going to do this thing for him, like he says, no, I don't want to do it, then he doesn't have to do it. He's not held to do this, and he can terminate it whenever he wishes. So you tell someone to go to the store and buy this for me, and then before he goes to the store to buy this for you, you tell him, no, I don't want you to do it. Okay, no problem. You can cancel this whenever you want. Or he says, no, I don't want to do it. Okay, no problem. And of course, this is looking at making sure that there's not going to be any like financial harm attached to him canceling what he's doing in this sense. But in general, this is the at-will contract that that anybody can change whenever they wish. If they wish to not do this anymore, then they can do that. And of course, he says, and if one of them passes away, then this cancels it as well. And so this is another concept here that it cancels. And the person, of course, in this day and age, if someone does cancel they tell someone to go do something for them, they should try to do everything they can to make sure that they let this person know that they don't want him to do this anymore. Because say they tell him to go buy something for him, and then he goes out to buy it, and then you say you change your mind, and then he goes and buys it, and he didn't know that you had changed your mind about this, then this creates a sense of harm, because he has now he bought something, and now that thing that has been paid for needs to be paid for by somebody's money. So of course that person should do what he can. Of course we have phones nowadays to let people know about that, but just so that there's clarity and there's no ambiguity when it comes to this. And of course this person has the right to cancel the transaction, and if the person doesn't know and he goes through and he canceled the transaction, he should let other people know when he canceled that transaction, or like he canceled the Wakaalah with this person, so that people know this is when I canceled it. So if this person doesn't get the message and he goes out and does it, that this would be invalid, and he wouldn't be held liable for this thing. And of course, the people should try to do their best to let everyone know about that. And then everything would be taken back. Like you see, if you made a purchase and whatnot, this would be invalidated and taken back. And so the next thing that he says here is وَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ. He says وَالْوَكِيلُ أَمِينٌ فِيمَا يَقْبِضُهُ وَفِيمَا يَصْرِفُهُ وَلَا يَضْمَنُ إِلَّا بِالتَّفْرِيطِ. And so he says, and the wakil is someone that is trusted, is a trusted person. And this is a very important concept. It'll come up later. But when he's trusted, which means that he is not held liable for losses, unless he was careless. So if he's doing something, and say he was buying a car for somebody, so he goes there and he buys the car, he got the car, and he's coming back with the car for this person, which he told him to do, and then the car gets in a wreck. Is he held responsible for this car getting in the wreck? You know, he had the permission to go get to get the car for this person and to bring it back, and so now he's bringing it back. Is he held responsible for this? No, he's not held responsible for this as long as it wasn't something that was his his fault. Like that is a major fault, and not just like that it was his fault, but like that he did something careless in general. So in this case, if he did something careless, and then he would be at fault. But normally he would not be at fault. Or say someone stole the thing that he purchased, or that there was something that happened on the way that destroyed the thing that he got for this person, or that he was doing. In this case, he would not be held liable, because he was ultimately doing this on behalf of this other person. So it's as if this other person, it happened to him. And this person, since he's been entrusted with this work, he's in a position where he is trusted. So he's trusted not to do these things that are this way normally. So normally he wouldn't be suspected of a foul play, since he is the one who's being asked to do these things. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So this is what the author here he brings here in that matter. And he also says here, وَلَا يَجُوزُ أَن يَبِيعَ وَيَشْتَرِيَ إِلَّا بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطِ. And he says it's not permissible for him to buy or sell except with three conditions. And he says the first of these is that he sells at the normal price. And so he needs to sell at the normal price. And so, of course, if he's buying something for someone else, he can't be he can't be buying something at a lesser price. Or, if he's buying, he can buy it at a lesser price, but he can't buy it at a greater price. So where this person's going to be losing money. If he's on behalf of this person, he can't be making this person lose money. He needs to sell it or buy it in a normal price. And so, of course, if he's going to sell it at a lesser price, then this is taking money away from from the person who told him to go sell this thing. So he can't sell it at a lesser price or buy it at a lesser price or at a greater price than is normal. So both of these things, they need to be at the same way. And the word yabi'a wa yashtari, and so bay' is buying and selling is the other, and yashtari is buying and bay' is selling. Yeah. And so both of these need to be done at the normal price. And I think in one of the versions, he only had that he sells at the normal price, but it'll also be in buying. And so, and then the next thing that he says here is that it is in bithaman mithl. And so, and that the other thing is that he buys at the same price, and also that it is naqdan, which is the other thing that is important, that it's the same, that it's in actual cash. So he buys it in actual cash, and that's also in the local currency. So he buys it in cash, and then it's also in local currency. So he can't buy these things or sell these things. Say if he's selling, he can't sell this thing with a payment plan for this person. If he's selling for someone else, he needs to actually make sure that it's in cash. So he can't tell this person, oh, you can pay me back in a year. So if he's selling something and says you can pay me back in a year, this is something that is not good, because you don't know that this person is going to pay back in a year or not. Maybe there's an issue with this. So he needs to make sure that if he's doing this for this other person, he can't go out and make things harder for him by doing this and take this extra, because this is an extra service that he would be giving this person who's buying, if he were to sell it to him on a payment plan. Of course, if the original seller gave him the permission to sell it on a payment plan, he said, okay, you can sell it on this type of payment plan for this person, okay, that's okay. But in general, if he doesn't say anything, then in this case it needs to be cash right now, and he can't make it on this other thing, and it needs to be in the cash of that actual country. So he can't be selling, say if you're in America, he can't be selling you something in America and then take a foreign currency such as Egyptian pounds in America. This doesn't hold weight, in America. So of course, it would need to be in the same currency, and of course, unless he gave specific permission. If he gave permission, then that's something. Then he's allowed to take it with that specific permission. But in general, he can't do these transactions unless he gives them that permission. And the last thing he says here is, وَلَا يَجُوزُ أَن يَبِيعَ مِن نَفْسِهِ وَلَا يُقِرَّ. So this is the next thing he says. And لَا يَجُوزُ أَن يَبِيعَ مِن نَفْسِهِ. So if he is told that you can sell this, he can't sell this to himself. And of course, because this person, if he tries to sell it to himself, he's going to be suspected of foul play. Maybe he's going to do something funny or try to give himself a deal, and this is not something he's allowed to do. He can't sell himself something on behalf of someone else. And so the same thing like that would be for him to tell someone else to sell it to him. So if he was given permission to make someone else a wakil on behalf, if he were to tell this person, I'm going to make you a wakil on my behalf and you sell me this goes back to him. So it's the same thing. He can't do this as well. And so this is the first thing he mentions here, is it's not permissible to sell to himself. And then the other thing that he says here, وَلَا يُقِرَّ عَلَى مُوَكِّلِهِ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. And he says also that he can't make a confession for the delegator. And so this is the confession. We'll talk about this in the next chapter here, which is called Iqraar. And so the iqrar is something that can't be, you can't do this for someone else. This is someone, if they confess, then this is something that they do for themselves. And the author here, he says, illa bi'ithnihi, except with his permission. And this is a position that is a weak position in the madhab, that, like, if we were to think that if he gave his permission, he could then make iqrar for this person. But the stronger position in the madhab is that even if he did give his permission, he wouldn't be able to do iqrar, like a confession for the delegator. So this is because the iqrar is something that the person himself, he needs to do this. He can't let someone else do this for him. And so this is, of course, like if you were to testify, this is a different thing. Like to make a shahada, which is like a testimony, this is something else. But to actually make the confession for the actual delegator, he can't do this, even if he had permission. And so that's one of the issues where the author here, he goes away from the strongest views of the madhab. And there's a few places where he does this, and normally I'll write that in the translation here. All right, so the next chapter that we're going to go into is the chapter of Iqraar, or it's also known as like confession. And so we just talked a little bit about this, but the basic concept of Iqraar is for someone to confess that they did something. Like to say that they either did something or that they owe someone something. It's basically a testimony against themselves, as opposed to a testimony against someone else. So they're testifying against themselves, I did this. And like if they're in the court of law, they would say, yes, I did destroy this piece of property, and so now they're held liable for this thing. Or if it's something that if they did a certain sin, then they would testify against themselves with this. And so the author here, he's going to talk about this here, and he says, وَالْمُقَرُّ بِهِ ضَرْبَانِ. And he says the thing that is confessed, there's two types of confessions. And so the first type, حَقُّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَحَقُّ الْآدَمِ. And so the two types, one is in regards to the rights of Allah, and the second one is the human rights. So these are the two types of confessions that he brings here. And the reason he brings these two different types is because there's a difference between the way that each one is dealt with. And so like the rights of Allah are certain things, such as if someone were to commit zina, or if they were to drink alcohol or something of this sort, or if they were to steal something in this case, then this is something that the right of Allah, when it comes to this, is that they would have the certain hudud, or the punishment for that thing, be applied upon them. And this is the right of Allah. Like this has to do with Allah's right for that, as opposed to like something that is the right of humans, which is if somebody slandered somebody and said that this person was a fornicator, and they said this person was a fornicator, then the right of this person that has been slandered is that this person gets lashed, and so which is called like the haddul qadhf, which is that this person would get lashed because this person's right, or like this person's dignity, has been encroached upon. So it's his right for him to get that, and this is a right that's connected not with Allah, and like it's not the right of Allah, but rather it's the right of this person, that they would get this punishment upon them, as opposed to like zina. Zina is something that it's the right of Allah for this person to get punished, and there's a difference between the rights of Allah and the rights of the people, or the creation. The rights of Allah is based upon that Allah is merciful, and that Allah wants people and their sins to be covered, and so He doesn't necessarily want the person to have their sins exposed in front of everybody. And so this is the basis of like the rights of Allah. So of course, if somebody did commit zina, it's not necessarily preferred for them to go out there and say, "Oh, I committed zina," and testify against themselves so that they get a punishment according to that. And the better thing for them to do is to keep this to themselves, and ask Allah, make sincere forgiveness for Allah, and keep this between them, and keep this quiet. And this is of the attributes of Allah, and also His name as-Sittir, which is, as Allah loves to cover the sins of the servants, and so that these are not something that is out there. And of course, if somebody did do this, then in this case, this would the right of them would be the punishment for zina. And so this is also comes in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, that Ma'iz radiallahu anhu, he's a Sahabi, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said that he committed zina. And so then the Prophet ﷺ said, you probably only, he's like, you probably only kissed, like giving him a way to come back from this. He said, you probably only kissed. And he said, no. He's like, no, not just kissing. And then he said, you probably only touched. And he said, no. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, are you insane? Like, are you mad? And he was like, no. And so after this, then he got the punishment for that. But he was the one who confessed to this, and the Prophet ﷺ gave him a bunch of excuses to where he could let him off of the hook in this. And so this is when it comes to the haqqullah, which is like the rights of Allah. That in this, the author says here, فَحَقُّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى يَصِحُّ الرُّجُوعُ فِيهِ عَنِ الْإِقْرَارِ بِهِ. And so he says, as for the rights of Allah, it's permissible for someone to go back on their confession. So in this case, we have the hadith. It was like if he would have went back and said, oh, okay, yes, he would have said, okay, I did this. It would have been okay for him to come back from what his original confession was. And this is based on the fact that Allah is forgiving, and that the issues between Allah and the people are something that someone can go back on if they make a confession to it. In regards to Allah. And so then, so if he were to go back on this in any one of this time, like in this hadith, if he would have said, no, I didn't do this, then in this case he wouldn't have had the punishment established upon him, and he could go back. As the Prophet ﷺ, he was giving him the chance to go back on this. And then the second type here is وَحَقُّ الْآدِمِ لَا يَصِحُّ الرُّجُوعُ فِيهِ عَنِ الْإِقْرَارِ بِهِ. And so he says, as for the rights of mankind, or like the people, it's not permissible for them to go back after confessing. So if somebody confesses that they have that they owe someone a certain amount of money, or that this item that they have in their possession is not their property, that's someone else's property. If they confess this, then in this case, after they confess, there's no more talk about that. They can't say, no, I didn't mean it, or they can't go back on this confession, because the basis of, as I mentioned, the basis with Allah is that Allah is forgiving. The basis with the people is that they all get their rights, and that they are that the people are always the basis is like that they're struggling and fighting between each other, and so because of this, the people, if anyone confesses to something one time, then there's no room for them to go back on this. So if someone says, oh, I owe this person $1,000, and so once he confesses to this, then there's no going back and says, no, I didn't mean 1,000, I only meant 100, or something of this sort. If he confessed and he meant what he said when he said it, then in this case he is held liable for this, and he can't go back. And this is basically when we look at the rights of people, when we look at the rights of Allah when it comes to these confessions, the rights of people, we are very much more strict with it. As opposed to the rights of Allah, because we know that Allah is forgiving, but people are, of course, we know that people, they need their rights, and not everybody is forgiving, and it's not the right of that person, it's not obligatory for them to forgive this person for their debt or anything. No, they're not held to this. This is something that if they did, this is nice, but the essence, or like the basis, is that everyone gets their rights. And so this is what he says here as far as these two types of confessions. And then as far as the confession itself, for it to be valid, so he gives here some conditions for the confession itself to be valid. The first one that he mentions is al-bulugh. He said, وَتَفْتَقِرُ صِحَّةُ الْإِقْرَارِ إِلَى ثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطَ. And so he says, of these three conditions, the first one is al-bulugh, which is of coming of age. Which is the coming of age, of course, as I mentioned before, it happens with a couple things. The first of these things is any type of semen that comes out. So whenever semen comes out of a kid, then he becomes of age. So if it's a wet dream, or from any other way, whenever whenever this exits, then in this case this person becomes of age. Or like for a woman, whenever she has her first period, then she becomes of age. Or the other thing that would happen is when someone reaches 15 years of age, from like the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar, but 15 years of age from the Islamic lunar calendar. In this case, they would become of age. So whichever one of these things happens first, then this is the thing that would make them baligh, which is that they're held accountable. So this person, if he's going to give a confession, he needs to be accountable first and foremost, which makes sense, because if you have someone who's not accountable, then they're talking about something that is that's like binding them to something. Then of course, like, this person is already he's already not accountable, so he can't hold himself to accountability in this. And so then the next thing he talks about is wal aql, and that this person also needs to be sane. So he needs to have reached maturity, which is the bulugh, and also sanity. And so this person is also sane. So if he's insane, then he can't be held accountable for what he says. So if you have someone who's insane, he says, "Oh, I did this, that, or the other," or "I owe this person this much money," and this blah 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 blah. All of these things won't be held accountable. He won't be held accountable for this, because he is not in his right mind. And so, like, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said that rufi'a al-qalam al-thalath, and then he says that the pen, which is like of accountability, has been lifted from three people: on the person who is sleeping until he wakes up, and on the sabi, which is like the kid, until he comes of age, yahtalim, which is like has a wet dream or comes into age, and then anil majnun hatta yaqil, and on the person who is insane until he comes back to his wits. And so then the third thing here, which is wal ikhtiyar, which is free will. And so of course this person can't be forced to make a confession, as in, like, if he's forced to make a confession, then in this case this confession is not valid, because of course maybe he's under duress or something of this sort. And inshallah we'll talk about like the duress, inshallah, in the future, like some of the ways that when do we take this into like when does duress actually occur. But in general, it means if this person fears for himself from something that would normally be something that this other person that is scaring him, that this person actually is able to do this damage that he's claiming to do for this person, or he's going to do it on someone else that is close to him and whatnot. So if this person is in this state of iqraar or duress, then in this case the confession would be invalid, because this person needs to choose to do this. And then he says, وَإِنْ كَانَ بِمَالٍ اعْتُبِرَ فِيهِ شَرْطٌ رَابِعٌ وَهُوَ الرُّشْدُ. And so he says, and if it's something that has to do with, if it's regarding money, then there's a fourth condition, and it is financial responsibility. So he needs to have this financial responsibility, which is rushd, which is, as we mentioned before, of the people that can't do financial transactions is someone who is like a person who squanders their money, like the safi mubaddir limalihi. This person is someone who doesn't have any money sense. So if he's going to confess to something that has to do with money, then in this case his confession is not taken into consideration, because this person doesn't even understand money in its first place, so he doesn't have any financial responsibility, so he can't be held responsible for anything that he says he did in regards to money, because he doesn't understand it. And so this is the fourth condition, if it has to do with money. If it has to do with the rights of other people, say he said something about someone else, or he had a confession that he wanted to make other than that, then this is something that would be taken into consideration, as long as he wasn't falling into the other three categories of whether he was not mature, or he was insane, or he was forced. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so there's a couple last thing that he's going to talk about in this chapter. He says, وَيَصِحُّ الْإِسْتِثْنَاءُ فِي الْإِقْرَارِ إِذَا وَصَلَهُ بِهِ. And so he says, and it's permissible for him to make an istithna, which is an exception. So if someone says, I owe this person $100 except $5. If he connects it with it, in this case, it's okay to do it. And then, like in Arabic, this there's actual terms for how this would happen, and like linguistically, but this is okay if he makes an exception of this, or like, I owe this person $1 million except 50. He can say this as long as it's connected with it. It needs to be connected with it, and he can't break this up with any major break. If he sneezes before he says accept something, and then he has to sneeze, and then he says the accept something, there's no problem. But the exception needs to be connected with what he said, and of course, in regards to the validity between him and Allah, this needs to be something that he meant to say from the very beginning. He needs to have the intention that he's saying this exception when he says the original thing. So if he says something and he didn't mean to make the exception, that it comes to mind, oh, maybe I can get off if I say an exception, then this is something that he can't do this. He can't make this exception. Even if he made it, it would be valid in the appearance, but it wouldn't be valid between him and Allah. He has to say, he has to have the intention to make the exception while he's saying what he's saying, or before he says it. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So this is for an exception to be made, he would have to do this. He would have to do this and connect it with what he was saying, and not make it afterwards. And he also says, وَهُوَ فِي حَالِ الصِّحَّةِ وَالْمَرَضِ سَوَاءٌ. And also he says, and confessions are valid whether someone is healthy or sick. And as I mentioned before, the person who is on their deathbed, who is sick in a way that they're feared for their death, then they're not allowed to do any transactions over 1/3. Any transactions of giving something to someone, they're not allowed to do any of these transactions except for with 1/3 of their money, because the other 2/3 are set aside for their inheritors. And so in this case, say someone had stolen maybe a property, and then they're on their deathbed and they say, oh, I actually stole this property. In this case, they can say this even though it would seem like this is their wealth, but it's not really their wealth. So it doesn't actually fall into that hajr, which we talked about before, the prohibition of them giving away their money, more than 1/3 of their money, because this ultimately, if they're confessing this isn't their money, then this isn't their money. So this doesn't fall into that category. So they can say whatever it is or confess to whatever they wish in this case, and this thing goes over to them. Of course, they have to be, they can't lie in this issue. That's a serious sin. But if they were to confess to something, then we don't look at whether or not this is from their 1/3 or not. That is for them. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So this is the chapter of confession. And any questions here before we move on? So the next chapter that we'll go into is lending, or Aariyah. And so of course lending is something that Allah has definitely encouraged us to lend with other people, and this comes into doing good for other people. And also He has blamed the people, or the people that don't lend, in this stinginess. This is something that Allah mentions in Surah Ma'un, when He says وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ, when He talks about these people that are وَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. This is for the people that He gives this severe reprimand for the people that when they're in their salah, or when in regards to their salah, they're sahun, which means they're not attentive to their salah, to make sure that they pray it and whatnot. And so then He talks about, and at the last thing of the things that are mentioned here is that وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ, is that they stop the person from helping. The ma'un is something that helps someone else. So if this person needed a screwdriver and he came to his house, he's someone, he asks, do you have a screwdriver for me? He's like, nope. And even though he has the screwdriver, he says no. So these little things that someone could help someone else out with by just lending them, then this is something that this evil person would prohibit them from these things, from just the smallest things. So this is what the tafsir of this ayah, a lot of times they will talk about the small things, such as maybe an axe or something of this sort, or a bucket or something for someone to get water and whatnot, that this person would stop this person from doing it, but rather he should give these things and what is easy. This is something that someone should help out. And so the basis of this transaction, he's going to talk about this because it's a type of transaction. If somebody takes something, there's going to be things that are connected to the rights of each individual in regards to the thing, in regards to who's taking it, and if something happens. So he says here, فَصْلٌ وَكُلُّ مَا أَمْكَنَ الْإِنْتِفَاعُ بِهِ مَعَ بَقَاءِ عَيْنِهِ جَازَتْ إِعَارَتُهُ إِذَا كَانَتْ مَنَافِعُهُ آثَارًا. And so he says, and anything that is permissible, that is possible to benefit from without being consumed, is permissible to lend if its benefits are lasting. And so this is the basic principle that he brings here, and this is important, of course. So anything that he says here, anything that is possible to benefit from. So, and this is any actual thing, like an actual thing that he can benefit while it's not being consumed. So if I were to lend someone like a gallon of gas for them to use in their car, this is not lending. Like, because this person, the point of the gas is to be consumed. So in this case, he can't lend gas. Of course, if he wants to like give it as a loan, and he's like, I'm going to give you gas here, but you can pay it back later. Okay, this is something else. But if it's something that's going to be like consumed, then in this case, you can't lend this. It's not a lending transaction. This would be something like you're either giving it to him or you're asking for it as a loan from this person to give him back something like it. And so if it's anything that's possible to benefit without being consumed, it's permissible to lend it if its benefits are lasting, which it actually has like lasting benefits that it gives, such as like if someone was lending tools. Like this is of course one of the best things someone could do. Maybe someone has a tool, has a good tool collection, and then when people come to him, he can get the tool and use it for the thing that he needs and give it back. And this is of course a great way for someone to help out their neighbors. And of course, like these are the rights of neighbors is very important, as Allah talks about in the Quran, of the rights of the ihsan for the people that are around this person, like the neighbors, and that we should always help them out with whatever we can. And of course, if the neighbors are not Muslim, then in this case, this gives them a great chance to give dawah, by helping them out and showing them the akhlaq that Islam has given us. So of course, like having tools and whatnot, this is something that tool, it lasts after it's being used, and it leaves the impact. Like so if someone gave like a wrench or something, or they gave like a power drill or something for this person to use real quick, this is something that helps them. It leaves the impact, and then you can get it back. And so the next thing he says here, with the Jews, he says, with the Jews, al-Aariyah mutlaqatan aw muqayyada. And so he says, and the lending is permissible, mutlaqa, which is that it's without a time limit, or muqayyada, which is within a specified time. So, and this is also not just the time limit, but it could also be with a certain use. So the person could say, you can use this, and he doesn't give any time. He just lets the person borrow it, and so he takes it and he uses it, and then if he wants to get it back at any time, he tells this person, hey, I want my thing back. And then this is fine. Or he can say, you can have this for a month or two. And then this person uses it for a month or two, and then he can get it back afterwards. And he says, okay, the month is over. The month or the 2 months are over. I want this thing back. And this is okay for him to do. So he can do it either this way or this way. And if he wants to say you can do it, you can use this in this way, then in this case he can have him only use it in this way. And so the next thing he talks about here, which is also important, is وَهِيَ مَضْمُونَةٌ عَلَى الْمُسْتَعِيرِ بِقِيمَتِهَا يَوْمَ تَلَفِهَا. And so he says that this is also madmuna, which means that this thing is, if it is destroyed, then he is held liable. Like the person who took this into, the person who is using this, the borrower, he's the one that's held liable for this thing. Then he needs to pay it back with an equal replacement if possible, or no, if it's guaranteed by the borrower at the worth of the day of its destruction. So in this case, this object, say he's using this object, he gets the drill, and he's using the drill, and it breaks while he has it. Okay, he's got the drill and it broke while he has it. He needs to pay back this person for the drill, or to get it fixed and whatnot. He's the one who's held liable for this. And how much is he held liable for? He's held liable for its worth at the day of its destruction. So say this was a drill, and then it got crushed or broken and whatnot. If this was a used drill, we'd say, how much is this? Was this drill at the time that it was destroyed? How much was it worth? Okay, this is how much he pays. So if it's a used drill, it's not the same as a new drill. He doesn't have to buy a new drill for this person. He only needs to pay the amount that this drill as a used drill would be. And he would pay this amount for this, or replace it with something like it. And so this is the person who is, of course we look at who's the person of benefit here. Like the person who lended something to the other person, he is the one who is at risk and he's doing this ultimately out of good nature. So he is not the one who's going to be on the bad side of the deal if something goes wrong. Like if this thing breaks, he's not going to be the one held liable for this, but rather the person who it breaks under, he's the one who's held reliable or held liable for this. And the same thing, say someone says, "Oh, can I use your car and go to the store and come back?" Then he runs into something and has damage in the car. This person who's using the car, he's the one who is liable for the damages, because he was not renting this car. He was someone who was actually just borrowing it, and so the borrower is the one who is held liable in the case of any damages. And so that's the last thing here that the author had to bring up.
ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.